The sound of wine glasses clinking filled our family home as I arranged white roses on the dining table. Tomorrow, my brother Thatcher would marry Karina Vance in the small church where our parents had wed 35 years ago. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe. "Celine, dear, could you help me with the centerpieces?" Mom called from the kitchen. Loretta Hartman had been planning this wedding for months, making sure every detail was flawless. I was reaching for another vase when Aunt Meredith grabbed my wrist. Her grip was firm, almost desperate. Her usually bright eyes looked dark and worried. "We need to talk," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Right now. Can't it wait? The rehearsal dinner starts in 2 hours and—" "No." Her voice cut through my protests like ice. "You need to hear this before it's too late." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. Aunt Meredith never looked this serious. Meredith pulled me toward the back porch, away from the wedding chaos inside. The evening air was cool against my skin, but I felt colder when I saw her expression. "What's wrong?" I asked, my hands trembling slightly. She looked over her shoulder, making sure no one followed us. "It's about Thatcher and Karina." My heart started beating faster. "What about them?" "Celine, honey." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "There's something about this wedding that isn't right. Something your mother never wanted you to know." The way she said it made me feel sick. "You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." Meredith's face was pale in the fading sunlight. "Because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about your family." I gripped the porch railing, preparing myself for whatever came next. "Do you remember when you were 7 and Thatcher got really sick?" Meredith asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Of course I remembered. He'd been in the hospital for weeks with some kind of blood infection. Mom had cried every night. "He needed a blood transfusion," she continued. "The doctors tested all of us to see who could donate." A chill ran down my spine. Where was this going? Your father couldn't donate. Your mother couldn't either. But the strangest thing happened when they tested me. She paused, watching my face carefully. I was a perfect match for Thatcher. Perfect. Which should have been impossible unless... Her voice trailed off. "Unless what?" I whispered, though part of me already knew what she was going to say. "Unless Thatcher was my son, not your mother's." The world seemed to stop spinning. Everything around me went silent. "That's impossible," I said quickly, shaking my head. "You're wrong. You have to be wrong." But even as I said it, memories started flooding back. Little things that had never made sense before. How Thatcher looked more like Aunt Meredith than Mom. How she always seemed to know exactly what he was thinking. How she'd cry every time she watched him play baseball, like she was proud and heartbroken at the same time. "I know it sounds crazy," Meredith said softly. "But think about it, Celine. Really think." I closed my eyes, trying to push away the images in my head. But they kept coming. Thatcher's green eyes, exactly like Meredith's. His laugh, which sounded just like hers. The way Mom sometimes looked at him with an expression I could never quite understand. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Because of Karina." My eyes snapped open. "What does she have to do with any of this?" Meredith looked around nervously again, then leaned closer. "Karina isn't who she says she is." My head was already spinning from the first revelation, and now she was adding more confusion. "What do you mean?" "Her last name isn't really Vance," Meredith said. "It's Hartman." I felt like I was going to be sick. "Hartman? But that's She's your father's niece, Celine. Your cousin." The porch started spinning around me. I gripped the railing tighter, trying to stay upright. This couldn't be happening. Not the night before the wedding. "That's impossible," I said again, but my voice sounded weak even to myself. "I've been doing research for months," Meredith continued. "Ever since Thatcher brought her home for Christmas. Something about her felt familiar, so I started digging into old family records." She pulled out her phone and showed me a black and white photograph. It was definitely Karina, but she looked younger and her hair was different. "This was taken at your Uncle Marcus's funeral 5 years ago," Meredith explained. She was listed in the program as Karina Hartman, his daughter. I stared at the photo, my hands shaking. But why would she lie about her name? Why would she pretend not to know us? That's what I've been trying to figure out, Meredith said grimly. But whatever the reason, it can't be good. Inside the house, I could hear people arriving for the rehearsal dinner. Laughter and conversation drifted out through the windows, making this whole situation feel even more surreal. Does Mom know? I asked. Meredith shook her head. About Karina? No. About Thatcher. She hesitated. That's more complicated. What do you mean? Your mother knows Thatcher isn't her biological son. She's known all along. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. How is that possible? Because she chose to raise him anyway. I don't understand, I said, feeling more confused by the minute. Meredith sighed deeply. When I was 19, I got pregnant. The father was married, and I was scared and alone. Your mother had been trying to have a baby for years with no luck. She paused, looking out at the darkening sky. So we made a deal. She would raise Thatcher as her own, and I would move away and never tell anyone the truth. It seemed like the perfect solution at the time. But what about Dad? Does he know? He suspected, I think. But he loved Thatcher from the moment he was born, so it didn't matter to him. I tried to process everything she was telling me. My brother wasn't really my brother. My cousin was marrying him under a fake name. My mother had been living a lie for over 30 years. Why didn't you ever tell me? I whispered. Because some secrets are meant to stay buried, she said sadly. Until now. We have to tell Thatcher, I said, starting toward the house. Meredith grabbed my arm again. Wait. Think about this carefully. If we tell him tonight, we'll destroy not just the wedding, but our entire family. But he's about to marry his cousin. We can't let that happen. Actually, Meredith said slowly, if Thatcher isn't really your father's son, then he and Karina aren't blood relatives at all. I stopped dead in my tracks. She was right. If Thatcher was Meredith's son, not Dad's, then there was no blood connection between him and Karina. But that still doesn't explain why she's lying about who she is, I said. No, it doesn't. And that's what worries me. Through the window, I could see Thatcher laughing with some friends, his arm around Karina's waist. They looked so happy together. So in love. How could I destroy that based on suspicions and old photographs? But how could I let him marry someone who was lying to him? I need some air, I said, feeling overwhelmed by everything Meredith had told me. I walked around to the front yard, trying to clear my head. Cars were parked along our street as more people arrived for dinner. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. That's when I saw him. A man in a dark car parked across the street, watching our house through binoculars. My heart started racing. I ducked behind a tree and watched him for several minutes. He seemed to be focused on the front door, like he was waiting for someone. When Karina stepped outside to greet some late guests, the man in the car sat up straighter and took photos of her with a long-lens camera. I felt sick to my stomach. Who was this person, and why was he taking pictures of my brother's fiancée? I crept closer, trying to get a better look at the license plate or the man's face. But before I could see anything clearly, he started the engine and drove away. I rushed back inside and found Meredith helping Mom arrange food on the buffet table. We need to talk more, I whispered in her ear. Right now. She followed me to the upstairs bathroom, the only place in the house where we could have privacy. There was a man outside taking pictures of Karina, I said quickly. Meredith's face went white. What did he look like? I couldn't see clearly, but he was watching the house for a while before she came out. The minute he saw her, he started taking photos. This is worse than I thought, Meredith muttered. What do you mean worse? What aren't you telling me? She sat down on the edge of the bathtub and put her head in her hands. When I was researching Karina's background, I found some things that didn't add up. Like what? Like the fact that she supposedly graduated from college in California, but there's no record of her ever attending classes there. My stomach dropped even further. What else did you find? I asked, dreading the answer. Her social security number was only issued 3 years ago. Before that, there's no trace of Karina Vance anywhere. I sat down hard on the toilet seat. You think she's using a fake identity? I think Karina Hartman disappeared 5 years ago, right after her father's funeral, and Karina Vance appeared shortly after that. But why would she change her name and create a whole new identity? That's what I've been trying to figure out. And I think that man you saw might be connected to whatever she's running from. Downstairs, someone called my name. The rehearsal dinner was about to begin. What do we do? I asked desperately. For now, we act normal. But keep your eyes open. If Karina is in some kind of trouble, Thatcher could be in danger too. The thought of my brother being hurt made my chest tight with fear. Whatever was happening, I had to protect him. Dinner was torture. I sat at the family table, watching Karina smile and laugh with everyone, knowing she was lying about who she was. Every time she touched Thatcher's hand or kissed his cheek, I wanted to scream. She was beautiful, I had to admit. Long blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. No wonder my brother had fallen for her so quickly. But now, knowing what I knew, her perfection felt fake. Like she was playing a role in some elaborate performance. "Celine, you look tired," Mom said, reaching across the table to touch my forehead. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just wetting nerves," I lied, forcing a smile. Thatcher raised his glass of champagne. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Tomorrow, I'm marrying the most amazing woman in the world, and I couldn't be happier." Everyone cheered and clapped. Karina blushed prettily and whispered something in his ear that made him laugh. I caught Meredith's eye across the table. She looked as uncomfortable as I felt. After dinner, people moved to the living room for coffee and dessert. I was in the kitchen helping Mom clean up when I overheard Karina talking on her phone in the hallway. "No, I told you, tomorrow is too soon," she was saying in a low voice. "I need more time." I stopped washing dishes and listened more carefully. "I know what we agreed, but the situation has changed. He's not just some random guy anymore. Her voice dropped even lower. I actually care about him." My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure everyone could hear it. "Fine. But if anything happens to him, I'll never forgive you." She hung up and walked back into the living room, her perfect smile back in place. I grabbed Meredith's arm as she passed by with a tray of cups. "I need to tell you something," I whispered. We stepped out onto the back porch again, and I repeated everything I'd heard. "She's definitely involved in something dangerous," Meredith said grimly. "We have to tell Thatcher tonight," I said. "Before it's too late." "Tell him what exactly?" "That his fiancé might be using a fake name? That some stranger was taking her picture? That she had a mysterious phone conversation." She was right. Everything we had was circumstantial. Thatcher would think we were crazy. But what if she's planning to hurt him? I asked. Or what if she's the one being hurt and she's just trying to protect him? I hadn't thought of that possibility. Maybe Karina was running from someone dangerous and she was trying to keep Thatcher safe by not telling him the truth. Either way, he deserves to know what he's getting into, I said. Meredith nodded slowly. "You're right. But we need proof. Real proof, not just suspicions." "How do we get that?" "Leave that to me," she said with a determined look I'd never seen before. "I have some ideas." I wanted to ask what she meant, but Thatcher appeared in the doorway. "There you are. Mom's looking for you, Celine." Time for the traditional sister-brother talk. The traditional sister-brother talk was something we'd done before every major event in our lives. Graduations, job interviews, first dates. We'd sit on the front porch swing and share whatever was on our minds. Tonight felt different, though. I knew things about Thatcher that he didn't know about himself. And I suspected his fiancée was hiding something that could destroy him. "I can't believe I'm getting married tomorrow," he said, rocking the swing gently with his foot. "Are you nervous?" I asked. "Terrified," he admitted with a laugh. "But in a good way. Karina is. She's everything I never knew I wanted." The way he said her name, with so much love and tenderness, made my heart break a little. "How did you know she was the one?" I asked. It sounds cheesy, but I knew the moment I met her. She was working at that little bookstore downtown, remember? I went in looking for a birthday gift for you, and she helped me pick out that poetry book. I remembered the book. It was still on my nightstand. "She seemed so familiar, you know?" Thatcher continued. "Like I'd known her my whole life." A chill ran down my spine. Of course she seemed familiar. She was family. "What do you know about her past?" I asked carefully. "She doesn't talk about it much." Her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by distant relatives. I think it's painful for her to remember. That matched what Meredith had told me about Uncle Marcus dying. But the timeline didn't quite fit. Doesn't she have any family coming to the wedding? A few cousins from California. They're flying in tomorrow morning. I wondered if those people were real, or if they were part of whatever elaborate story Serena had created. Thatcher, I said slowly, what would you do if you found out someone you loved had been lying to you about something important? He stopped rocking the swing and looked at me seriously. Is everything okay, Celine? You've been acting strange all evening. I'm fine. Just wondering. Well, he said thoughtfully, I guess it would depend on why they lied. If it was to protect someone, I might understand. But if it was to hurt someone? He shrugged. I don't know. Trust is everything in a relationship. I lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything Meredith had told me. By morning, I was exhausted and more confused than ever. The house was already bustling with activity when I came downstairs. The wedding was at 2 o'clock, which meant we had less than 6 hours to get ready. There's the maid of honor, Mom said cheerfully, handing me a cup of coffee. Karina's upstairs getting her hair done. Why don't you go check on her? The last thing I wanted to do was pretend everything was normal with Serena, but I couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. I found her in my old bedroom, sitting in front of the mirror while a hairstylist worked on her elaborate updo. She looked absolutely radiant. Celine. I'm so glad you're here, she said, smiling at me in the mirror. I'm so nervous I can barely sit still. You look beautiful, I said, and meant it despite everything. I hope Thatcher thinks so. I wanted A to be perfect for him. There was something in her voice that made me look at her more closely. Her hands were shaking slightly, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Did you sleep okay? I asked. Not really, she admitted. I kept having this dream that something terrible was going to happen at the wedding. My heart started racing. What kind of terrible thing? I don't know. It was all mixed up and confusing. But someone was trying to stop the ceremony, and Thatcher was angry with me about something. She looked so genuinely worried that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. It was just a dream, I said. Wedding day nerves. But as I said it, my phone buzzed with a text from Meredith. Meet me at the church early. I found something. I excused myself and hurried to get dressed. Whatever Meredith had discovered, I had a feeling it was going to change everything. When I arrived at the church, she was waiting in the parking lot with a manila envelope in her hands. You're not going to like this, she said without preamble. Meredith handed me the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were several printed documents and photographs. The first document was a newspaper clipping from 5 years ago. Local man dies in suspicious car accident. The photo showed Uncle Marcus, but the article mentioned he'd been investigated for embezzling money from his company before his death. The second document was a police report. Serena Hartman had been questioned in connection with her father's financial crimes, but charges were never filed due to insufficient evidence. But it was the third document that made my blood run cold. It was a marriage certificate from 3 years ago. Serena Vance had been married to a man named Obadiah Whitmore in Las Vegas. She's already married, I whispered. Was married, Meredith corrected. Look at the next page. It was a death certificate for Obadiah Whitmore, dated just 6 months after their wedding. Cause of death, apparent suicide. That's 2 men connected to Serena who have died under suspicious circumstances, Meredith said grimly. My hands were trembling as I looked through the rest of the papers. There were bank records showing large cash withdrawals from accounts in Obadiah's name, all made after his death. You think she killed them? I asked, my voice barely audible. I think your brother is in serious danger. We had less than 2 hours before the ceremony was supposed to begin. Guests would start arriving soon, and Thatcher was probably already on his way to the church. We have to stop this wedding, I said. Just then, a black sedan pulled into the church parking lot. The same car I'd seen outside our house last night. The man who got out was tall and thin, with graying hair and cold eyes. He looked around the parking lot until he spotted us, then started walking in our direction. Ladies, he said, flashing a badge. Detective. Blackwood smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Mrs. Vance has been very hard to find. But thanks to social media photos from your brother's engagement party, we finally tracked her down. Wait, I said, my mind racing. Before you arrest her, I need to know the truth. Did she kill those men? Blackwood's expression softened slightly. No, she didn't. But she witnessed something that put her life in danger. My heart stopped. What do you mean? Her father wasn't just embezzling money. He was laundering it for some very dangerous people. When he tried to get out, they killed him and made it look like an accident. Meredith grabbed my arm. And her husband? Obadiah Whitmore was an undercover federal agent. When Karina realized what her father had been involved in, she contacted the FBI. Obadiah was assigned to protect her, but they found him first. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. Karina wasn't a killer, she was a victim. She's been in witness protection for 3 years, Blackwood continued. But she broke protocol when she fell in love with your brother. We've been trying to bring her in before they find her again. She really loves Thatcher, I said, understanding finally dawning on me. That's the problem, Blackwood replied. Love makes people do stupid things. Like trying to have a normal life when killers are hunting you. Just then, Thatcher's car pulled into the parking lot. He got out wearing his black tuxedo, looking happier than I'd ever seen him. You have to let them get married, I said desperately. She's been through enough. Blackwood shook his head. I'm sorry, but her life is in danger every second she stays here. Those men who killed her father and husband? They know about the wedding. They're probably already on their way. As if to prove his point, 2 black SUVs with tinted windows drove slowly past the church. What if we could catch the bad guys instead? Use the wedding as a trap, I suggested. Blackwood seemed interested. What do you have in mind? They're expecting to find Karina at a wedding with lots of innocent people around. But what if we evacuate everyone else and fill the church with undercover agents instead? Within 30 minutes, Blackwood had called in backup from 3 different law enforcement agencies. Federal agents dressed as wedding guests started arriving. The hardest part was telling Thatcher the truth. I found him in the church vestry and quickly explained everything about Karina being our cousin, the witness protection program, and the danger she was in. So she's been lying to me this whole time, he said after a long silence. She was protecting you. She never meant to fall in love with you. Thatcher stood up and straightened his jacket. Then let's do this. She needs someone who will stand by her no matter what. The ceremony began exactly on time. When Karina saw Thatcher waiting for her at the altar, her face lit up with pure joy. My name is Karina Hartman, she said clearly when the minister seemed confused about which last name to use. That's when everything went wrong. A man in the back row stood up. I object, he said, pulling out a gun. But instead of chaos, Blackwood's plan kicked into action. Federal agents immediately surrounded the gunman. FBI, drop your weapon, Blackwood shouted. The gunman looked around wildly, realizing he was outnumbered. This isn't over, he snarled at Karina before surrendering. After the excitement died down, the minister asked, should we continue? Thatcher and Karina looked at each other and started laughing. Yes, Karina said, wiping away her tears. Let's get married. I do, they both said when asked, and when they kissed, the entire church erupted in cheers. 6 months later, they were happily settled in their new house. Meredith had formed a real relationship with her biological son, and our family had grown closer through sharing the truth. Sometimes secrets really can set you free, and sometimes everyone gets their happy ending after all.